My name is Robin Martin. I run a real estate team in the suburbs. I've been with KW for in October will be 4 years, so 3 years. I've been licensed for almost five in July. My life before real estate, I was a college track and field coach. So, so disc profiles. Has anybody heard of those? Yeah. So basically, it's just a personality test. It allows you to kind of get an idea of perception into yourself and gives you a little bit of perception into the person that you're talking to, right? So there's a, let's see if I can. So in a real estate transaction, like in any conversation with any human, there's a couple of things that you can control. And the reality is this is, this Venn diagram is an example of how little you can actually affect, right? In the world. There's all these things that matter to you. There are these things that you can control, and the intersection is very, very small. Does that make sense? Anybody's lives feel like that a little bit, right? These are all these things that matter, and the things that you control, and this intersection is very small. Well, one of the pieces of this intersection is how you can affect how your words are interpreted by the people that you're talking to. Does that make sense? You ever have a conversation with someone and they're just not here? Did you ever do that? If you hear someone talk to you and you're just like, I don't understand. The reason is we all hear the world differently and we all speak differently. Sometimes those don't mix. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So in this great world of things that matter and things you can control, affecting how you're heard, how speaking to other people in ways such that they can hear you is part of that intersection. That's how we're going to spend some time. Cool? Mm-hmm. All right. All right, so we're going to jump back into the slideshow here. Today, you guys are going to get a chance to take your own DISC profile. So if you guys want to scan that, you can take a quiz, and it's going to give you your own DISC score. So that way you can, the first key to knowing how to speak to other people is really understanding yourself. So I'm going to give you guys some time to take this quiz. It should take about 10, 15 minutes.
There you know, man. Name that. I have never not been a D.
I'll give you some space to take. And if you put your email in, I think it's going to send the test directly to you. If it gets sent to me, I'll make sure that I send it back to you guys. Just like any personality test, there's no right or wrong answers. So don't sweat. Those of you who are joining us from Zoom, by all means, feel free to join along and take your DISC test. Even if you're taking it before, sometimes it change a little bit.
Yeah. What about when you're 100% always?
Well, it'd be like, yeah, I'm much the same. I'll show you mine.
You're much nicer than
me. Welcome back. There's no right answer.
No, really trying to. There's a massive.
Go with your gut. Maybe that one's good. They say that actually the faster you answer, the more likely it is to be honest, so. Thank you. Let me know when we get to the end. You're gonna learn a lot today. It's gonna be fun. When did it come here? You're done?
Yes.
I'm just gonna log into. You didn't get it? Hi. Right, is anybody else done? Yeah? I'm supposed to send it to you, but it's sending them to me instead, so. You just, let me know your name, and your email address, and we'll send it to you.
I'm Dominique. My email is Wilkins, so that's WIL.
Dominique Wilkins?
Yeah. Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing, Dominique. I grew up watching you play basketball.
I get it so often. It's just spelled, the first name is spelled differently though. Last name is the same.
All right, Dominique, can you hear your address?
Yeah, so it's Wilkins, WILKINS, and first name Dominique, DOMONIQE at KW.com.
You guys if you guys are on Zoom and you took the test, drop in the chat your email address and I will send it to you. Chat. Nailed it, okay. This is gonna take me a second, so. All right, anyone else done?
Yeah, Tom Satarski.
That's right, so. Never forget that one.
Yeah, it's quite unique. Then email is tsatarski, SITARSKI 99 @gmail.com.
DS.
I
Mhm.
SITARSKI 99 @gmail.com.
Awesome.
Thank you.
TSITARSKI99 @gmail.com.
Correct.
You did the same thing.
Well, what are you?
A day. Every time.
All right.
I used to be a social worker and I'd get it and I'd be like, no, I know this. He did D in real estate, he's interested in that.
For sure. All right. Incoming slow. James, was the rain coming? You did it? All right. Usually this happens a little faster, so I apologize.
Got an email, but it just said, finished the assessment.
Good one.
Said I got an email, but it just said that I finished the assessment.
Okay. What's that?
Regardless of my.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your email?
Louis, OEWIS. Dot Vargas, B as in Victor, ARGS, @KW.
Okay. All right, who else is we? I think we're missing two, right? Your name?
Nazina Hutchinson, and my email is Hutchinson@kw.com.
All right, so one at a time. Bruce, did you get yours?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. How do you spell it again?
My NZINGA.
Got it.
See? Oh, you know.
Okay, and your email address?
Avena, so that's AVENA dot Hutchinson at KW.com.
HUTCH.
Oh, HUTCHINSON at KW.com.
All right, one more to go.
That's just all.
There you go.
FNICHAD.
FNICHAUD. Oh, yeah,
So that one lets me to my company. That's about this one. But it's not.
all right. So, this is the last one. And everybody should have, right? Okay, so we're gonna get into what those all mean, but who here has the highest bar that's a D? Raise your hand. Not the D's in the room.
All I received was a thank you email from the science team. Really see anything. Like one of us said.
I must have sent to the wrong place. What's your email again?
Avena, so that's AVENA.
That would make sense, but it's, yeah, AVENA
Dot.
Hutchinson. HUTCHINSON.
Yes.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
and Sasha wants to scan it for.
No problem. Give me 1 second. AVENA dot HUTCHINSON@KW.com.
HUTCH.
HUTCHINS. Okay. You should have it now. All right. So a couple D's. Anybody who are the I's? Any I's in here? Oh man. Any S's? Huh? Any C's? Were you or a D? Okay. So the book. So that's a statistical oddity, which is makes sense because we're the same, right? So D's are actually the rarest. And feel special. It's usually about 12 to 14% of the population. You can imagine if there were 80% D's, we'd all kill each other. It wouldn't be perfect, right? So the reality is like this balance makes the world go round, right? The balance makes the world go round. So we'll get into what some of those percentages look like. Let me get rid of this for you. Sorry. Oh, that's not what we did. Get there. There. So let's kind of move into all right. So this is not necessarily an indication of who you are. It's much more of an indication of how you act and communicate. Does that make sense? It's not really about any essential human traits about It's really more about how we interact with the world at large. So what's important about the disc is not only do you learn how to interact with other people, but you also get an idea of how other people perceive you. And once you see how other people perceive you, you can go down the road of being able to mitigate some of the downsides. Because every group in the disc profile, we'll go into what those mean in a second. But every group in the disc profile has its positives and negatives, right? So D is for dominance, those are drivers, super competitive. I's are for influencers, people that are inspiring and super enthusiastic. S are for like stabilizing. These are like super patient people, thank God for them. And then C is for cautious, right? The super analytical, numbers-based versions of ourselves. And all of these have positives and negatives. I'm gonna tell you a story about how the disc profile saved my marriage, right? So here's me, okay? 99D, 99, okay? I got a good amount of S, and I don't think there's a lower score possible for C, okay? So all my life, I couldn't balance my checkbook for sure, right? Like in my 20s, I probably had a good 5 years where I paid my cell phone bill when they turned it off. You know what I mean? Like that's how organized I was. Like the absolute absence of organization. That's always been me. And I really got down on myself. Like, you know, like you're just like, you know, like you guys beat yourself up a little bit. Like you're like, God, no, why are you so stupid? Right? Everybody say something like that to themselves. So I would do that because I wasn't very organized and I would lose things all the time, right? If me and my friends got in a cab, I would, who's the one who left their wallet or their phone in the cab? That's me, right? All the time. And I beat myself up about it for my entire life. And it wasn't until I took this disc profile to understand that to be high in some areas by nature you have to be low. Does that make sense?
You know what?
To be high in some areas by nature you have to be low enough. Oh. So basically, if you add up all of these numbers, that's how much you have to give. You can kind of move around a little bit, but the reality is no one has 100. It's not a real person. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so you start to understand you're like, I lead a team. Before this, I was a head coach for a college program. Like I've always been a visionary, right? I've always been a coach, an influencer. That's always who I've been. And something's got to give, right? And so it started to help me understand myself, right? It started to help me understand that like to have high in somewhere, you have to have low in others, okay? So I'm gonna tell you a little about my wife. She's very, very smart. She has 2 degrees, one from Wharton Business School, one from Penn Engineering, okay? Super, super smart. When I get sick, she throws me a bottle of Gatorade in the door and says, hey, when you feel better, I'll be downstairs. Right? Now, for a long time, I thought that meant that she didn't really love me. You don't really love me. You don't want to take care of me. And it wasn't until we did this DISC assessment that it made sense. Does that make sense? You see? 99D, 99C, and here's her sympathy and her empathy. Does that make sense? And so part of the things that make her amazing by nature make her not as sympathetic as maybe I would like her. Yeah.
So whichever one is the highest, is I thought it was the logo. I thought that was the answer.
No, yeah,
So
so
it's this. So
you're at, and yes, so you would be an S. Yeah. And usually we kind of go by the top 2 letters. So you'd be an S something. Whatever your second, yeah, SD, which is very rare. So, this helped me understand her in a entirely different light. It didn't mean she didn't love me. It just meant that's where her sympathy is. Like, it's just her stability, her caretaking, her all of that is just down here. Yeah? But, you see how we make a good pair? She has all the seed. I have none of the seed. She has all this. So we made a great pairing, but it just helped me understand her and the disc profile helped her understand me. Does that make sense? Because she's like, why can you never keep track of anything? Right? And it's not these are not failings. This is just natural balance. Does that make sense? Like they have to be balanced. You'll find some people that have a little bit of everything, but they'll all be in the middle. Do you know what I mean? Like you can't, like the numbers don't really change by much. Like when you add up all the numbers. You guys with me so far? So I love that story because that's kind of how this saved my marriage. So one of the things that I think is just really fun is to talk about each of the profiles themselves. We're going to start talking about how you can communicate with them directly. Okay? So let's talk about D. There's a lot of D's in this room. We're direct, driven, determined, fast-paced. Does that sound all right? Yeah. We value actions and results and freedom. We're good with change. Don't mind confrontation. We love proving ourselves. That's the traditional D. Okay. When we're talking to a D, does anybody struggle to talk to people like that? Ironically, sometimes Ds struggle talking to other Ds, which is an interesting one.
Actually, I'm saying that probably talking to the same type of person.
Yeah, yeah.
Finally come back.
I think D is fine. I feel like maybe like most people have a hard time talking to Cs because they tend to be very analytical and we need to connect with them.
100%. So, when we're talking to Ds, and we'll get into Cs in a second, but it's be quick and be gone. Okay? I don't want all the details, I don't want all the fluff, I don't want all the story, right? Like you call them on the phone, listen, what do you need? Right? That's a D. And so you want to be confident and you want to be brief and specific. Okay? That's how we talk to a D. Now here's what's great. When people make you nervous, this is good to know. People make you nervous, what do you do? What do you guys do when people make you nervous as you're talking?
Just mumble, like keep going, just say words without even.
Say words, exactly. Yeah, that's what I do. Like you catch me, like you back me, I'm just gonna say some words. They may not make any sense, but I'm gonna say something.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, come on. That is the worst defense against a D. Right? Like I'll get real wordy, I'll be over explaining, right? Against a D, you have to be really careful. So when I go to talk to a D, I usually I have a note on my CRM, and I always do a deep breath, right? Because I have to come in it with energy, and I have to come in it like concise. Because as soon as when someone goes, "What do you need?" Like, start backing up. And that's the wrong answer, right? Like when someone says, "What do you need?" No, the question is, "What do you need?"
Yeah.
Right? Then you can come back and that with that same energy and that is received. You guys with me so far? So this is a D. Now, if you're a D, you have to know that that's how you come off. Right? You come off as aggressive. You come off as driven, you come off as confident, which is great when you're talking to other Ds. It's problematic when you're talking to S's. Does that make sense? Because the S's are going to give you yeses, and that's a problem. Do you know what I mean? So for those of you that are S's, that you guys know about the fake S, the fake yes. right? Like we're, got it, look, you guys are in, you're in, right? You're like, yeah, I'm totally in, right? And the S is like, I'm absolutely not in, and I'm gonna keep nodding my head so this guy goes away, right? So we have to be really careful kind of understanding who we are. You guys with me so far? Cool. Let's talk about eyes. Anybody here has an eye? You and I?
Yeah.
My man. So these are the optimists, they're outgoing, they're bubbly maybe, and they value connection. So I do well with eyes because I'm a DI, but I get that. Sometimes like I don't care what you're selling, I'm leaving you behind. Right? Like I just get into that, I can get into that space. It's about connection for me. So they eyes have a hard time speaking directly. And staying focused, and you're traditionally not detailed people, so you will very rarely see an IC as the two major components. Does that make sense? Although I do have an IC in our team, Joe Jackson, she's like super. So how do you communicate with an eye? You want to let them talk, you want to listen, and you also have to be really good at misdirection, right? With eyes, you gotta be careful of not chasing the rabbit, right? Because they're gonna go off on tangents. You have to be like, absolutely not. I think that makes a lot of sense. So about that interest, right? You gotta always pull it back, right? So eyes, they're about experience, they're about connection. We wanna connect with them on that. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Now, notice if we're quick and decisive and confident with an eye, what's gonna happen?
Deal.
They'll lose them, right? Because they strive for connection. So this is kind of what I mean when it's that intersection of things we can control and things that matter. Because the information that you're giving out when you're selling, when you're talking to your wife, talking to your friends, the information you're giving out is the same, it's how you communicate it that matters, right? So I can communicate that I don't think it's a good idea for you to wait until the winter to sell your house. And I can do that quick and decisively, right? I can do that methodically, and ask me about your experience and what's important to you in the sale of your home. I can ask it a lot of different ways. I can tell you information in a lot of different ways, and the DISC profile kind of enables you to create a framework on how you convey information in such a way that the person who's listening to you can hear it. So I was teaching a class in this once, and someone was like, "Do you feel like this is manipulative?" And my immediate response was, "No, I feel like this is love." Because if you can speak to people in ways that they can hear you, you're bringing it to them, right? You're bringing it to their doorstep. You're not using it for misinformation. You're just speaking to your audience in a way that they can hear you, and it creates connection. This creates connection. All right, so let's move on to the S. So supportive, stable, calm, consistent. Remember my wife's S, right? She's not very calm. S is like a slower pace, loyalty, stability, appreciation. They're very patient. They're very sensitive. They like, if you want to talk to them, simple, nice, gentle, slow, and soft. With S's, you gotta pull it, you gotta pull a little bit. They're not just gonna tell you everything. You gotta ask a lot of questions, and you gotta listen. S's give you yeses, and that's not a good thing. They're gonna nod, and they're just gonna smile, and then they're gonna never talk to you. Right? Does that sound all right? My man, right? So the key is to pull out of them and to listen. So just to give you a little like a review, those are like politicians, surgeons, principals. leaders. See, these are just stereotypes, by the way. That doesn't, you can be anything in any zone. My number one salesman on my team is an S, right? That doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean you can't do these things, I'm just giving you generalities. So that's a disclaimer, disclaimer.com. I's are influencers, sales, the typical occupation for I's. S's, nurses, administrators, teachers, just nurturers in general. That's if you want to think of an S that way, right? And then we'll go on to the last group are the C's. And the C's, cautious. They use a lot of like numbers, analytical. They value accuracy and quality and what's right. They're very concerned with what's right. That's all right, you know? Yeah. Okay. What else? Their strengths are delegation. They are pretty good at giving up control. Sorry, these are backwards. Those are weaknesses. A C's weaknesses are delegation, giving up control, and quick decisions. Okay, those are their weaknesses. They need to think things through. They need to be very emotive. So, unlike when we're talking to an I, it's all about the story and pulling it out of them. In this case, you don't want to do anything. This needs to be about facts, about truth, and then we move on. You want to get them talking about their plans and their details and typical occupations of accountants and engineers. Any questions about D's or S's or C's or I's? Remind me again, all the D's, raise your hand. All the S's, raise your hand. All the C's, we don't know yet, so it's like a mystery. It's gonna be exciting.
Mine's confuses me because like the S is like I clearly understand the S part, but then it has D and I at the same level. I'm
So-
confused.
So it means your number one quality is an S, but you're a little, like, you can occupy all the zones a little bit. I kind of saw you, it's a little bit even, right? So one big spike in the S and a little bit even. Which is kind of cool, which means that you can relate, which, not bad, me too. So it means you can relate to a lot of different kinds. Right? And I bet you find that in your life. You can,
Adaptability.
yeah, you can relate to a lot of different, yeah. Anybody have a second super high bar, 2 high bars? Your DI? Yeah.
I'm SI.
SI, super rare. That's really cool. Yeah. Awesome. You're an ID. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So the graph, by the way, if you wanna, I don't want to do what that's. Anyway. The way that the graph is done is the D's and the I's are extroverts, the S and the C's are introverts. The D's and the C's are task-based, and the I's and the S's are people-based. So you're either a people-based extrovert or people-based introvert, or you're a task-based extrovert or a task-based introvert. Does that make sense? Isn't that interesting?
Wait, say it again.
Yeah,
say it
yeah,
again.
you need to figure out.
No,
What's the S in the team for?
I'm trying to get them. I don't know. I'm not that smart.
I was so you lost me.
Yeah. So this line right here separates extroverts and introverts. Right? This line right here separates task-oriented people and people-oriented people. Generalities, don't get too wrapped up. But like, does that make sense? So D's and I's are extroverts, C's and S's are different. So usually, your two characteristics will touch. That's very normal. DC is normal, DI is normal, IS is normal, SC is normal. DS's, that's an oddity, and IC's are oddities. And you can see why. It'd be really weird to be super bubbly and super analytical. Name a person that has that. Or super dominant, but you really care about other people. It's like, that's really hard, that's hard to pull off. Does that make sense? Cool.
From the slide.
I think it's interesting that DI is actually like extrovert, because I'm actually an introvert. So it's interesting to see that.
Maybe you didn't know that.
I know, right?
Maybe that's-
Maybe professional, I feel like that's different from professional versus personal.
All right, so this is actually I said 14%, I was waiting. This is actually the breakdown of the population of the United States.
Wow.
The overwhelming majority of the people that you talk to, that you sell houses to, or sell houses for, are S's. Is that crazy?
So it's great, yes.
So get good at this, right? Get good at this, because that's gonna be the majority of people that you sell houses, to, right? So, and honestly, for the world to work, it kind of needs to be this, right? Like, you really can't have too many of these guys in here. Like, to be honest, they're just all in this office, but like, you can't have a ton of those, right? To make the world go round, you need a lot of this. So S's in sales, actually, these guys have the personality to sell, but these guys have the inroad into the largest population because they understand. Does that make sense? Cool. Cool. Okay, so we're gonna do one more thing before I let you guys go. So this is why it makes sense to understand who it is you're talking to. I like this as my traffic example. Okay? So now that you know the personality groups, I want you to imagine an S is an S is in front of a D in traffic. Already a problem, right? S is in front of a D in traffic. And then the S, these cars go to merge, right? What does the S do? Lets them in, right? S lets them in. And then what is the D thinking when the S lets them in?
Oh, why didn't you?
Right? Yeah. 100%. Okay, so now let's switch it. The S is behind the D, the D's in front, the S is behind the D. These people go to merge, what does the D do?
Move up closer.
Yeah.
Speed up.
And that's the guy who moves like half on the curve so that like no one can go by him, right? Yep. What is the S thing?
Why didn't he just let people order?
Yeah, what an S. Right? Yeah, 100%. Okay. So now D's behind the D. And the D does not move when the people try to merge in. What if it's not a D, right? So the D's behind the D. The guy doesn't let them in. What does the D behind him say?
Good shit.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Right?
I've seen it actually firsthand.
So, same scenario, right? The S is behind the S. And the S lets people in. What does the S behind that S say?
What a good guy.
Yeah, all is right with the world. Yes. So this is why it's so important to learn how to speak in ways that people can understand. Right? I want you to be you, but I want you to be able to
Acclimate.
have enough understanding and love to be able to speak in such a way that your target audience can hear. Whether that's your wife, or your husband, or your significant other, your mom, or your clients, right? The reality is, if we're if we're talking in our own language, there's gonna be a disconnect. Like we're not talking the same as the same. Does that make sense? Is that useful?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, you guys can take those, desk reports with you, grab some food, and, what time's the meeting? 3 o'clock, all right.
Team minutes went out.
Do you guys have any questions about anything that we're talking about? Yeah?
I was,
So.
can I have that myself, or I could just do it with my friends?
Well, so it's coming to me, so if you're having a really important thing and you wanna know,
Yeah, put it in.
I'll send you the I'll send you the link. Of course, yeah, it's gonna be an email.
So, but I think maybe that's
When I started seriously dating, I gave them a month.
that's the team and solo event operation, not but they are. Maybe that's like a invite one.
Yeah.
Might be an invite. Not to listen. Let's see.
Yeah.
I thought about them so good, but like, with like people that are like, who work, like my uncle is extremely like, extremely. But I know when to take it down, when to dial down from him, because I already know like, yo, I'm not gonna win.
But that's the thing, I know I need to step back and listen, where it's my natural orientation to talk.
Right.
Like, I stand up here all the time.
So that's the email you.
I like to talk. But like, if I can step back and go, okay, I need to listen because otherwise it's gonna be a day. Alright, then I'm doing that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, cause like,
I know.
I can be extrovert to a certain extent, that's probably why the D is there, but at a certain, but after like a certain time, I have a limit of outside.
I
Social.
You and,
Just kind of-
you guys have almost identical.
The S, the D, and the I. Yeah.